In this video, we're gonna talk about the forms of communication. But in order to understand the forms, I'm gonna explain first what communication is. According to Weekly in 1967, the root of the word communication in Latin is communicare, which means to share or to make common. Communication is the way to express our ideas and opinions to someone else. It is a process of sending and receiving message in order to achieve understanding. Communication can be expressed in different ways. It can be in the use of words, signs, and even behaviors. As what I've said earlier, we're gonna talk about the forms of communication. Communication comes in different forms that may change depending on the context, how many people are involved, and how the message was delivered or received. And now, we're going to talk and discuss the 5 forms of communication, which are the intrapersonal communication, interpersonal communication, group communication, public communication, and the mass communication.
Intrapersonal communication can be defined as communication with oneself and it's including self-talk. Also, acts of imagination and visualization. And when we are recalling a memory. So meaning, intrapersonal communication is about yourself or talking to yourself. When you are going to a decision making, that's a intrapersonal communication. And also, when you are thinking about your happy memories, that is a intrapersonal communication also. So you can understand easily the meaning of this topic. Many of you are familiar or know about intrapersonal communication. But for you to understand intrapersonal communication, here are some examples. At the first picture, the boy is making a decision, and it's an example of intrapersonal communication because you're talking to yourself of what do you want to do. Is it going to an workout or staying at the house? The second picture is another of example of intrapersonal communication because he keeps on thinking about things that makes his self-esteem lower. Lastly, on the third picture is also an example of intrapersonal communication because he is having second thought that he's usually made by himself. That's all. Thank you.
According to the Communication in Real World 2010, if only 2 different individuals are involved in the exchanging of thoughts, ideas, opinions, and perspective, then their conversation is called interpersonal communication. They may or may not have direct relationship with each other, but it doesn't matter as long as they are both active and effective in the communication process. This form of discourse can be arranged or impromptu. But the fact that one of the characteristics of interpersonal communication, which is being usually interactive, makes it more organized and influenced by social expectations. A counseling between a student and a mental health professional is considered interpersonal. A productive exchanging of strategies of 2 business tycoons will also fall under the form of communication that was mentioned earlier. Are you aware that your heart-to-heart talk with your very best friend is classified in this category? If not, well now you know. An interaction between a sales lady and a consumer, one-on-one recitation with your teacher, a simple conversation between yourself and someone you are acquainted to, and an employer conducting an interview with a potential employee are even included in the examples of interpersonal communication. You do not have to worry if they are discussing about formal things or not. If only 2 people are talking, then confirmed, it is an interpersonal communication.
Group communication is a mode of communication between 3 or more interacting individuals in order to accomplish a particular objective. It is a form of communication between three or more people collaborating to achieve a something. The purpose of group communication is to exchange information in order to make decisions, resolve confusion, build rapport, and get closer attaining the business goal. However, group communication also has an effect on how individuals in the group treat each other and feel about one another. We form a relationship with everyone naturally because it is one of the essential elements of our lives. They exist in several forms of our lives. When more than two individuals are involved, it is called group communication. Groups such as families, group teams, friendship circles, committees, and teams are some examples. Group may overlap and share common goals and objectives. An individual may belong to one or more groups. To understand it more, here's an example video of group communication. As you can see in the video, the teacher asks the class to answer her question, and the students are answering all the questions. So we can say this is a group communication because you are interacting at the same time. They are all responding and there is a sender with the receiver and with the feedback. Another example, me and my friends are studying and discussing about the exam for tomorrow, so we are providing some knowledge about lessons that we will be taking on the exam.
Public communication is a sender-focused form of communication in which one person is typically responsible for conveying information to an audience. This form is usually seen during campaigns, speeches, or other public speaking events. Among the other forms of communication discussed so far, this is the most formal, intentional, and goal-oriented type. Public communication is a communication by means of newspaper, magazine, billboard, mass mailing, or other printed materials, a telephone communication, internet advertisement, or a communication by means of any radio, television, cable, satellite, or internet broadcast, or any other forms of communication to the general public. The first general purpose that some people have for giving speeches is to inform. Simply, this is about helping audience member acquire information that they do not already possess. Audience member can then use this information to understand something or to perform a new task or to improve their skills. The most important characteristic of informative topics is that the goal is to gain knowledge. Knowledge sharing is the process of delivering information, skills, or expertise in some form of people who could benefit from it. Every year, millions of people attend some kind of knowledge sharing, conference, or convention in hopes of learning new information or skills that they will help them in their personal and professional lives. To completely understand what is public communication, here's some quick example. In this video, we heard how he shared his opinions, learnings, and some knowledge to the students and parents as a valedictorian. We can see here that this is a public communication because there are a speaker who gives information and knowledge to the students. Its objective is to inform like news and educational program, to encourage as we saw in the advertisement, to entertain like blogs on YouTube, confuse whether public or mass communication. Those are the things that makes a public communication unique.
Mass communication is the widest form of communication, where the receiver's feedback is not necessarily needed. It only focuses on the message that comes from the sender. That's why it is called the sender-focused form of communication. The objectives of mass communication is to inform people through different mass media, like news and educational programs. It also encourages people, as we saw in many advertisements, and for entertainment purposes like vlogs on YouTube. Sometimes people get confused whether the example is public or mass communication because they are both sender focused. The thing is, some public communication may turn into mass communication when it was transmitted to many people through print or electronic media. For example, Mass in the churches is an example of public communication. But when it broadcasts on the television, it turns into mass communication. Does make sense, right? Here is another example. When the politician makes his or her speeches in the barangay or city is an example of public communication. But when the reporters come in that area and film that or make a news article, it will turn into mass communication. Those are the things that make mass communication unique from others.
To summarize all the important key points, communication is sending and receiving message in order to achieve understanding. And communication have 5 main forms, which is intrapersonal communication, communication within oneself, interpersonal communication. 2 individuals are involved in the exchanging of thoughts, opinions, and ideas. Group communication is a mode of communication between 3 or more individuals collaborating to achieve something. And 4th, public communication is a sender-focused form in which one person is sending information to an audience, while mass communication is the widest form of public communication. Public communication becomes mass communication when it passes through media. Again, communication have 5 main forms: intrapersonal communication, interpersonal communication, group communication, public communication, and lastly, mass communication.